a writer does break into television, what can they expect, and what are they going to need to know to survive as a television writer? I mean, is there an unspoken protocol that you say that the 50 rules of writing aren't written, they're not written down?
Walter Bennett told us a nice story. When he was a rookie writer in a room, he pitched a joke, and oil painting, and then 20 minutes later one of the more seasoned writers pitched the same joke, and everybody cracked up, and he said, "Hey, I just pitched that joke 20 minutes ago." The showrunner turned to him and said, "Come on, Walt, don't be like that." It's when you're the new guy any place. When you're a rookie, rookie.
So it's about politics.
Oh,
and
major league politics. And the bigger the show, the more the staff, the more politics. That's why my student Sarah, a couple of the faculty who heard about her getting this break on this A&E show, oh no, she should be in a big room having to fight for a story. And my attitude about that is, she's learning her craft in a relatively calm environment. She's going to have enough of that later. Let her learn, she got lucky. So, yes, I know this is true on our shows, that most of the time on a show like The Good Wife, the rookie writers, what we call baby writers, don't get a script the first year. They don't get, or if they do, it doesn't necessarily go past the table.
When we interviewed David Breckman, he said he spent a year on SNL and said, getting something on the air, says half the cast comes in with characters they already have, that they write stuff for, and then the guest comes in with certain bits that they do, so the number of new bits that are totally written from scratch, very small number, and everybody's competing for those spots. It's very tough.
What about non-creative etiquette?
What do you mean?
How should one conduct themselves? Suppose they do get this
job?
This television job.
Oh, I have very strong feelings about that.
Okay.
The mythology that you go in and show everybody how smart you are is really stupid.
Well, it ends up showing everybody how arrogant you are.
I think what people look for is for you to prove yourself over time and to listen and to be there to learn. Most people who go, I have another friend, Gloria Calderon, who actually broke in through her plays and was on How I Met Your Mother for the first 5 seasons and a lot of other shows. Right now she's doing Mark Cherry's new show, the guy that created Desperate Housewives. And she's also teaching for us again. She likes to come in. She was an LMU graduate, and she likes to come back and teach. She said that her first year in a television show, she listened a lot, and she opened her mouth only when she had something that she was really certain about. And she really looked to the older writers, to the more experienced writers, to help her. So politically, attaching yourself to people who know more than you do is not only smart politically, but it's also, you're going to learn more. You don't learn anything from the other baby writers. They're in the same situation you are.
Just like getting along in prison, when you're the new guy.
Without the other part of it that we won't mention, because this is going to be on YouTube and there are restrictions. But yeah, I mean, I think the main thing I've learned is the etiquette should be, and be nice to people, because that old rule about who you see on the way up is who you're going to meet on the way down. So I don't think anybody ever there's a couple of people who are absolute jerks, but for the most part, people are people like they are in any other business. They're going to be the showrunner's going to be under a lot of stress because they do more than just sit in that room. But most of the showrunners I've known are really great people and sweet, and good people. And artists are, they're up and down. But I think you learn more by listening. Never been my gift, but no, I'm kidding. But I think
that's not true, because you listen to yourself as you speak.
That's true.
Well, we had stories about showrunners that in the book that ranged from people who walked on water to people who used to be submerged way under it, and all the points in between.
So there's a bad apple in every bunch.
Yeah,
Well, but it really colors the flavor of the room. And, Peter Casey talked about a room he was in where he came to the room late one day and brought his own cornflakes with him and went to pour milk in there, and the showrunner came in and said, "That's just for coffee." He said they were that cheap.
Mhm.
And he said he learned, we used to take the writing room out for dinner if they had to stay late, and to treat them much nicely, and he got much more out of them. So.
Yeah, the Charles brothers, who you mentioned, Taxi, they used to take everybody to Chasen's, which, the great old, now closed restaurant. They used to take them, for premieres of the show and cast parties, and they treat... Phil Rosenthal used to have activities that he would do with the writer's room. Everybody on the show would go to Disneyland on a weekend, and they would pay for everything. Well, probably the network paid for it, but no, I think only 2 people left Raymond in all the years it was on, and 1 came back. So 2 people left, and they both went to Sex and the City, and 1 came back. And
they described it like family.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were other rooms where people were saying, "I just hated walking in there." It was
Yeah.
just,
Good
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah.
but it's interesting, the pressure that one of the writers for Raymond, Lou Schneider, told us a great story that he was in a room, and Lou was also a stand-up, and the writer next to him said, and he whispered a joke to him and said, "Would you pitch it for me?" Because he didn't think he was a good enough joke teller, and Lou was a stand-up, and he wanted to make sure he got his joke in, and he wanted the best presentation of it. I mean, it shows you what some of the pressure is like there sometimes.
Know your strengths, I think, and work on your weaknesses is what I've heard. That's what a lot of... I didn't like the room, I have to be honest. I've only been in a few, because when I was doing it full time, there was a lot of freelancing, and I don't think there's enough freelancing now. I think shows get stale very quickly because the same 8 people are writing it, And that works on HBO and Showtime because they don't do more than 12. They do the British model of 12 to 13 shows a year. But when you're doing 24 Good Wives, they can all be good, and I don't know. It's sometimes I think they get stale, and there's a big difference between The Sopranos and Revenge, for example, which seems to me a little. I've only seen 2 episodes, but it seems a little soapy, So I think I think we might all be better off if there were more freelancing. But I didn't like the room. I was never comfortable in it. My partner was great in it, again, because she was an actress. And she was very good doing that stuff. I couldn't wait to get out of there and write something. Which, by the way, nobody in a writer's room ever really wants to do. They would much rather sit there and talk about sports and who they are dating. And that is about half of what goes on in a writer's room. I would say more than half, probably. And a lot of eating.
So it sounds like you have to be really good in social settings.
Yes. Or be with a partner who's really good. If I were doing it now, at my advanced age, I would probably enjoy it more. I didn't like the constant judgment. You've got to be willing to be... And I never had those experiences where it was like Raymond, where people were really respected, or, like Cheers or Frasier, where people were... one of the things that Lou Schneider told us in Show Me the Funny, I just thought I'd mention the name of the book, in case anybody wants to buy it, is that a lot of what's wrong with television is that people get through on false credits. So that you hire somebody who has credits that they really didn't earn, they're not their credits, which I think is fascinating. And it explains a lot of what I've seen over the 25 years that I've been around it. It's like, that is really scary that they could get hired on something and then of course they can't deliver. There's a thing in movies, called a discretionary fund, that when an actor has had a number of hits, like Emilio Estevez, this is a great story. Emilio Estevez, when the Mighty Duck movies were doing so well, the studio gave him a discretionary fund, which is really just saying, here, develop some properties, we may or may not make them. And I don't even know if they're doing that with anybody but the really big stars now. And he developed a script which sold on the pitch, which was a fish comes up on land. This is all these two guys said. A fish comes up on land and has to and becomes half human and has to interact with human beings and figure out how to get back in the water. And they bought it. And of course they never made it. So there's a lot of, I don't know, this is really far from the writer's room. You might have noticed I have ADD, but that's okay. You know, we've all got our crosses to bear. Yours today is mine. It's, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I again, it's like a lot of what gets by in Hollywood is based on an idea. And you could be great at pitching, by the way, but if you can't
right.
If you can't write, sooner or later someone's going to figure that out. You know? So you might think about bringing a producer along who can help you not only pitch it, but develop it into a good script. Because Peter's got a very close friend who is a great producer and a manager who I think has made scripts better by being in that partnership. And that, so, I don't know. I'm wandering a bit. I'm sorry, Karen, I wander.
I think some people, you know, even though they might be very creative in large groups, I think sometimes they can have problems, and I think that makes them seem one way, but they're really not. It's just that social anxiety or whatever it is.
Well, when we interviewed Michael Elias, rooms were just starting to be in vogue now in sitcoms. He and his partner created Head of the Class. It was probably back in the 70s. And he said, that's not writing, and what comes out of there doesn't sound like one person's voice.
Mm.
So he had a lot of problem with it.
Yeah, I don't think I would do well in a room.
You're doing fine here.
Well, yeah, but I'm good in small groups. I'm not good in...
It's a room.
Yeah,
and Alan Ball, you know, people like Alan Ball and Aaron Sorkin, they have very small rooms, and they'll tell you right up front. Aaron Sorkin tells his staff, I'm going to listen to all your ideas, we're going to spitball, but I'm going to write the scripts. That's how he gets that voice,
Yeah,
you know.
that's fair.